Clara Whitmore's knees hit the frozen ground as her youngest daughter went limp in her arms. 4-year-old Grace had stopped shivering an hour ago, and Clara knew what that meant. Behind her 11-year-old Lily clutched 7-year-old Samuel, both children too exhausted to cry anymore. The stagecoach had abandoned them 3 miles back. The driver said a widow with 3 children wasn't worth dying for in a blizzard. So Clara made a decision. She would carry Grace. She would drag her children through this hell. And if God had any mercy left, someone in Silver Creek would remember what compassion meant. Before we continue Clara's desperate journey, I'd love for you to subscribe to our channel and follow her story to the very end. Drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories travel. The snow had turned from white to gray in the dying light, and Clara Whitmore knew they were running out of time. Grace hadn't moved in her arms for the last quarter mile. The child's breathing was shallow, her small body radiating a heat that terrified Clara more than the bitter cold. Fever. In this weather with no shelter, a fever could kill faster than the freeze itself. "Mama!" Lily's voice cracked behind her. "Samuel can't feel his feet anymore." Clara stopped, her lungs burning from the frigid air. She turned to look at her 2 older children. Lily stood rigid, her thin coat dusted with snow, one arm wrapped around her younger brother. Samuel's face was pale as milk, his lips tinged blue, and he swayed where he stood. "Come here, Samuel." Clara kept her voice steady, though everything inside her was screaming. "Come stand close to me." The boy shuffled forward, and Clara shifted Grace to one arm, pulling Samuel against her side with the other. His small body trembled violently. "I want to go home," he whispered. "I know, sweetheart. I want Papa." Clara closed her eyes. Daniel had been dead for 8 months. 8 months of creditors pounding on their door. 8 months of selling everything they owned. 8 months of watching her children grow thinner while Boston society whispered behind gloved hands about the widow who'd married a gambling man. "Papa's watching over us," she said. "He sent us west to find a new home. We just have to keep walking." "I can't." Samuel's legs buckled. Clara caught him before he fell, but the motion nearly sent her to the ground. Grace slipped in her arms, and for one terrible moment, Clara thought she would drop both children into the snow. "Lily." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Take your sister." Lily hesitated. "Mama, Now, Lily." The 11-year-old stepped forward and took Grace from her mother's arms. The transfer was awkward, Lily struggling under the weight of her unconscious sister, but she held firm. Clara lifted Samuel, settling him on her hip like she'd done when he was a toddler. He was too big for this now, too heavy, but she would carry him until her arms gave out. "We keep moving," Clara said. "The town can't be much further." She didn't know if that was true. The stagecoach driver had pointed vaguely west before he'd unhitched his horses and ridden away. 3 miles, maybe 4, he'd said, not meeting her eyes. "Road's clear enough if the snow don't get worse." The snow had gotten worse. They walked. 1 foot in front of the other, Clara counting steps to keep herself sane. 100, 200, 300. Samuel's arms tightened around her neck, his face buried against her shoulder. Behind her, Lily's breathing grew ragged under Grace's weight. At 500 steps, Lily spoke again. "Mama, I see something." Clara squinted through the swirling snow. Ahead, barely visible in the gathering darkness, a shape materialized. Large. Moving. Her heart seized. Wolves. She'd heard stories on the train west about wolves in Montana Territory, about how they could smell weakness, how they hunted in packs. "Get behind me," she ordered, lowering Samuel to the ground and pushing him toward his sister. "Both of you stay close." "Mama." "Quiet." Clara reached into her coat pocket, her fingers closing around the small pistol she'd bought in Chicago. 2 bullets. She had 2 bullets and 3 children, and absolutely no idea how to shoot straight. The shape drew closer. Not a wolf. larger than a wolf. A horse. And on the horse, a man. He emerged from the blizzard like something out of a fever dream, tall in the saddle shoulders, broad beneath a heavy coat hat, pulled low against the wind. He reined his horse to a stop 10 feet from where Clara stood, her pistol raised with shaking hands. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the man spoke, his voice cutting through the howl of the wind. "Ma'am, you planning to shoot me or ask for help? Either way, you might want to decide quick. Storm's getting worse." Clara's grip tightened on the pistol. "Who are you?" "Name's Elijah Thornton. I'm foreman at the Rocking H Ranch." He nodded toward her children, his eyes lingering on Grace's limp form in Lily's arms. "That little one don't look good. She has a fever. Then we need to get her warm." He dismounted in one fluid motion, and Clara took an involuntary step back, the pistol still raised. The man stopped, holding up both hands. "I ain't gonna hurt you, ma'am, but that child needs help, and the nearest help is my ranch. It's about 2 miles west." The stagecoach driver said Silver Creek was 3 miles. Driver lied. Town's at least 5 miles from here, and there's a creek between here and there that's likely frozen over by now. You try to cross it in the dark, you'll go through the ice. His eyes met hers, steady and serious. "My ranch is closer, warmer, and my housekeeper knows a thing or two about fevers." Clara's arms were shaking. Whether from cold or exhaustion or fear, she couldn't tell anymore. Behind her, Samuel had started to cry, the soft, hopeless sobs of a child who had nothing left. "Why should I trust you?" The question came out harsher than she'd intended, but the man didn't flinch. Instead, he reached up and removed his hat, holding it against his chest, in a gesture that seemed almost old-fashioned. "You shouldn't," he said quietly. "You don't know me. I could be the worst kind of man, and you'd have no way of knowing until it was too late." He paused, his gaze moving to the children again. "But here's what I do know. That boy's lips are turning blue. That little girl in your older one's arms ain't got much time if we don't get her fever down. And you," his eyes returned to Clara's face, "you're about 10 minutes from collapsing yourself, and then all 3 of those children die out here in the cold." Clara's vision blurred, tears or snow she couldn't tell. "I'm asking you to trust me," Elijah Thornton said. "Just for tonight, just long enough to get your family somewhere safe." The pistol lowered. Clara didn't remember making the decision to lower it, but suddenly her arm was at her side, and she was nodding, and the stranger was moving toward her children, with a purpose that brooked no argument. He lifted Grace from Lily's arms, first handling the small girl with a gentleness that surprised Clara. Then he turned to Samuel, crouching down to the boy's level. "Hey there, son. What's your name?" Samuel." The boy's teeth chattered. "Samuel. Good strong name." Elijah shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. "I'm gonna put you on my horse, Samuel. You ever ridden a horse before?" Samuel shook his head. "Well, there's a first time for everything. Just hold on to the saddle horn, that's this part right here, and don't let go. Can you do that for me?" Samuel nodded, and Elijah lifted him onto the horse with the same ease he'd shown with Grace. Then he turned to Lily. "What about you, miss? You need carrying too." Lily drew herself up, all 11 years of wounded pride. "I can walk." Something that might have been a smile flickered across Elijah's face. "I don't doubt it. But walking slow, and we need to move fast. How about you ride up behind your brother, and make sure he don't fall off?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. Elijah helped her mount behind Samuel, positioning her arms around her brother. That left Clara. She stood frozen, watching this stranger arrange her children on his horse, her mind struggling to process what was happening. An hour ago, she'd been certain they were going to die. Now this man, this cowboy, was giving up his coat for her son, cradling her fevered daughter against his chest, preparing to lead them through the storm to safety. "Ma'am," Elijah's voice broke through her thoughts. "We need to go." Clara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. He was perhaps 5 years older than her, with a face that had been weathered by sun and wind. Dark hair, dark eyes, a jaw that hadn't seen a razor in several days. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that should have made her feel like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. But when he extended his free hand toward her, Clara took it without hesitation. His fingers closed around hers, warm and rough with calluses. "Stay close to the horse. Don't let go of my hand." "What about you?" "You gave Samuel your coat." "I'll manage." "You'll freeze." "I've survived worse." He started walking, leading the horse with Grace cradled in one arm and Clara's hand clasped in the other. "Talk to me, ma'am. Keeps me awake." "About what?" "Anything. Where you from?" "What brings you to Montana Territory in the middle of winter with 3 young ones?" Clara stumbled over a snow-covered rock, and Elijah's grip tightened, steadying her. "Boston?" she said. "We're from Boston." "Long way from home." "Boston isn't home anymore." He glanced at her, a question in his eyes, but didn't press. "What's waiting for you in Silver Creek?" "Work. I'm a midwife. There was an advertisement in the Boston papers. Silver Creek needs a midwife." "That they do. Mrs. Patterson's been handling births for 20 years, but she's getting on in age. Doc Aldrich does what he can, but he ain't exactly gentle when it comes to women's matters." Clara filed that information away. "And you said you're foreman at a ranch." "The Rocking H, biggest spread in the territory. Been there going on 7 years now." "You're not from here originally." "Ohio. Came west after the war." "The war." Clara did the mental calculation. He would have been young during the conflict, perhaps not even 20 when it ended, but old enough to fight. Old enough to carry whatever weight veterans carried. "My husband served," she said, then caught herself. "My late husband." Elijah's pace didn't falter, but she felt something shift in his grip on her hand. "Recent, 8 months. I'm sorry." "Don't be." The words came out before she could stop them, sharper than she'd intended. "I mean," she took a breath, the cold air burning her lungs. "It's complicated." "Usually is." They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds the howl of the wind and the crunch of snow beneath their feet. Grace stirred in Elijah's arm, letting out a small moan that made Clara's heart clench. "How much further?" "Half-mile, maybe less." Elijah pointed ahead with his chin. "See that light?" Clara squinted through the snow. Far ahead, barely visible, a warm yellow glow flickered against the darkness. "That's the main house. Mrs. Delgado, she's the housekeeper. She always keeps a lamp burning in the window when I'm out in bad weather." His voice softened slightly. "She's a good woman. She'll know what to do for your little one." Clara's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Helping us. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I had a daughter once. She was about that one's age." He nodded toward Grace. "If she'd ever been stuck out in a storm, I'd have wanted someone to help her." "Had." The word hung in the frozen air between them. Clara didn't ask. Some wounds weren't meant to be probed by strangers. They reached the ranch as full dark descended. The main house was larger than Clara had expected, a 2-story structure, with a wide porch and smoke curling from 2 chimneys. Before they'd even reached the front steps, the door flew open, and a woman appeared silhouetted against the warm light within. "Elijah Thornton, where in God's name have you—" The woman stopped mid-sentence as she took in the scene before her. A man with a child in his arms. A horse with 2 more children on its back. A woman stumbling through the snow, barely able to stay upright. "Rosa." Elijah's voice was calm but urgent. "This is Mrs. Whitmore and her children. The little one's got a fever. The boy's half frozen. They need warmth, dry clothes, and something hot to drink." Rosa Delgado didn't hesitate. "Bring them in. Quickly." What followed was a blur of activity that Clara would later struggle to remember clearly. Rosa took charge with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. Grace was stripped of her wet clothes and wrapped in warm blankets. Samuel was settled by the fire with a mug of hot broth. Lily was given dry clothes and set to work helping, because Rosa had the wisdom to know that an 11-year-old needed purpose to keep panic at bay. And Clara was guided to a chair by the fire and handed a cup of something hot and sweet that burned going down. "Drink," Rosa ordered. "All of it. You're pale as death itself." Clara obeyed. The liquid, some kind of spiced tea with honey, and something stronger underneath, spread warmth through her chest. Her hands stopped shaking. Her vision cleared. She looked around the room for the first time. It was comfortable, well-furnished, but not fancy. A working rancher's home, not a showpiece. Books lined one wall. A rifle hung over the fireplace. And in the corner, so small she almost missed it, a child's rocking horse, dusty with disuse. "Your daughter's fever is high, but not dangerous yet." Rosa's voice drew Clara's attention back. The housekeeper was kneeling by the small bed that had been hastily made up near the fire, one hand on Grace's forehead. "I've seen worse. She needs rest and fluids and to be kept warm. By morning, we'll know more. Thank you." The words felt inadequate. "I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't try. Just rest." Rosa stood brushing off her skirts. "I'll bring you something to eat. When did you last have a proper meal?" Clara tried to remember. The stagecoach stop, perhaps. That had been God, had it only been that morning. "This morning, I think." Rosa's expression tightened, but she said nothing. She simply went to the kitchen and returned with a tray laden with bread, cheese, cold meat, and more of the hot tea. "Where's Mr. Thornton?" Clara asked, as she forced herself to eat, her stomach cramping with the sudden introduction of food. "Seeing to his horse and changing into dry clothes. He gave his coat to your boy." Rosa's voice held a note of something Clara couldn't identify. Pride, perhaps. Or worry. "He'll catch his death one of these days, giving away his warmth like that." "He saved our lives." "That he did." Rosa settled into a chair across from Clara, her dark eyes assessing. "You said you're going to Silver Creek. You have people there." "No, just the promise of work. I'm a midwife." Rosa's eyebrows rose. "A midwife. We need one badly in these parts. Mrs. Patterson's hands shake so bad now she can barely hold a baby after it's born." "That's what the advertisement said." "You came all this way on an advertisement?" There was no judgment in Rosa's voice, only curiosity. "From Boston," Eli said. "That's a long journey for uncertain work." Clara looked at her children. Samuel had fallen asleep by the fire, his color slowly returning to normal. Lily sat beside Grace's bed, holding her little sister's hand with a fierceness that made Clara's chest ache. "There was nothing left for us in Boston," she said quietly. "My husband left us with nothing but debts. I sold everything to pay what I could, but it wasn't enough. We were about to lose our home." She paused, the familiar shame rising in her throat. A widow with 3 children isn't exactly a desirable prospect for employment in Boston society. But out here no one cares where you came from, Rosa finished. Only what you can do. "Yes." Rosa nodded slowly. "You'll do well here, I think. Montana is hard on soft people, but you don't strike me as soft." Before Clara could respond, the door opened and Elijah Thornton stepped inside. He'd changed into dry clothes, his dark hair damp and pushed back from his face. Without his hat and heavy coat, he looked younger somehow, more human. His eyes went immediately to the small bed where Grace lay. "How is she?" "Sleeping," Rosa said. "Fever's not broken yet, but she's resting easier." Elijah nodded. Then his gaze shifted to Clara, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Mrs. Whitmore, how are you feeling?" "Better. Thanks to you and Mrs. Delgado." Clara set down her cup and rose to her feet, swaying slightly. Elijah moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "I'm fine, just tired. You should rest." "I will. But first..." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I need to thank you properly, Mr. Thornton. What you did tonight was the decent thing to do." His voice was gruff. "Didn't require thanks." "It does require thanks. You could have ridden past. The stagecoach driver did." Something flickered in Elijah's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or disgust. "The driver left you out there in this weather. He said a widow with 3 children wasn't worth dying for." The silence that followed was heavy. Rosa muttered something in Spanish that sounded like a curse. Elijah's jaw tightened until the muscle there jumped. "What was his name?" "I don't remember. I don't—" Clara's voice broke without warning. The events of the day crashed over her all at once. The abandonment, the walk through the blizzard, Grace going limp in her arms, the absolute certainty that they were going to die. Her legs buckled. Elijah caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy." His arms were around her, solid and warm, holding her upright. "I've got you. I'm sorry." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face without permission. "I'm sorry, I can't." "You don't need to apologize." His voice was low, meant only for her ears. "You kept your children alive today, Mrs. Whitmore. You walked miles through a blizzard with a 4-year-old in your arms. You did what needed doing. Now it's time to let someone else carry the weight for a while." Clara's hands fisted in the fabric of his shirt. She should pull away. She should maintain her dignity, her distance. She was a stranger in this man's house, dependent on his charity. But she was so tired, so unspeakably tired. "I can't fall apart," she whispered. "My children need me." "Your children need you alive and strong." Elijah's hand came up to rest on the back of her head, a gesture so unexpectedly tender that it made Clara cry harder. "And you will be. Tomorrow. But tonight, you're allowed to be human." Across the room, Lily watched in silence, her eyes moving from her mother to the cowboy who held her. Something shifted in the girl's expression. Not quite trust would take longer, but something close to hope. And beside the fire, Grace stirred in her sleep, her small hand reaching out toward the warmth. Outside, the blizzard raged on. But within the walls of the rocking H, 4 lost souls had found shelter. Tomorrow, Clara would face the reality of her situation. She would have to find a way to Silver Creek, establish herself as a midwife, build a life for her children in this harsh new land. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she let herself be held. And for the first time in 8 months, perhaps longer, Clara Whitmore allowed herself to believe that they might actually survive. Rosa Delgado had seen many things in her 40 years of life. She'd survived the cholera that took her husband. She'd raised 3 children on her own before they'd scattered to the winds. She'd watched Elijah Thornton ride onto the rocking H 7 years ago, a broken man with haunted eyes, and she'd watched him slowly piece himself back together through sheer force of will. But she'd never seen him hold a woman the way he was holding Clara Whitmore. Oh, it was innocent enough. The woman was exhausted, terrified, pushed past her limits. Any decent man would offer comfort. But there was something in Eli's face, as he guided Clara to the spare bedroom, something Rosa hadn't seen since before he'd lost Martha and little Rose. Something that looked an awful lot like hope. She kept her observations to herself as she helped settle the children for the night. The boy Samuel, his mother had called him, was tucked into a pallet by the fire, his color much improved and his breathing steady. The little one, Grace, remained in the makeshift bed Rosa had prepared, her fever still high, but no higher than before. The older girl was a different matter. "I'll sit with her," Lily announced when Rosa suggested she get some sleep. "Grace might wake up scared. She doesn't know where she is." "I'll be right here," Rosa pointed out gently. "I won't leave her. I'm her sister. It should be me." There was a fierceness in the child's voice that Rosa recognized. The fierceness of someone who'd had to grow up too fast, who'd taken on responsibilities too heavy for young shoulders. "Tell you what," Rosa said. "How about you lie down on that cot over there, where you can see your sister. If she wakes up, you'll be right there. And if you fall asleep yourself—" She held up a hand to forestall the girl's protest. If you fall asleep, I promise I'll wake you if anything changes. Lily hesitated, torn between exhaustion and duty. Finally she nodded. You promise? On my life. The girl settled onto the cot, her eyes fixed on her baby sister's face. Within minutes, despite her best efforts, she was asleep. Rosa pulled a blanket over her and sighed. 4 children in this house tonight, counting the 3 Whitmore young ones and Eli himself. Because for all his 38 years and weathered exterior, Elijah Thornton was still just a boy sometimes. A boy who'd never gotten over losing his family, and probably never would. She heard footsteps and turned to find Eli standing in the doorway, watching the sleeping children. She settled. The mother, yes, asleep almost before her head hit the pillow. Rosa moved to stand beside him. You did a good thing tonight, mijo. Did what anyone would do. That's not true, and you know it. She studied his profile in the firelight. That stagecoach driver left them to die. Most men would have ridden past and told themselves it wasn't their business. Most men are cowards. And you're not? Eli didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the children, particularly on Grace's small, flushed face. She reminds you of Rose, Rosa said quietly. It wasn't a question. A muscle jumped in Eli's jaw. She's the same age, same blonde hair. Eli. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't tell me I can't save her just because I couldn't save my own daughter. I know that. I'm not trying to... He stopped, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. I'm not trying to replace what I lost. I just couldn't ride past. Rosa nodded slowly. She believed him. But she also knew that the human heart had a way of doing things the mind didn't approve of. What happens tomorrow? She asked. When the storm clears. They'll need to get to Silver Creek. I'll take them myself, make sure they arrive safe. And then... Eli was quiet for a long moment. And then nothing. She's got her own life to build, her own path to walk. She doesn't need a broken-down cowboy complicating things. Rosa made a sound that might have been agreement, or might have been skepticism. Get some sleep, Eli. Tomorrow we'll be here soon enough. He nodded, but he didn't move. Rosa left him standing there watching over the children like a sentinel, and went to prepare for whatever morning would bring. Clara woke to pale gray light filtering through unfamiliar curtains, and the momentary terror of not knowing where she was. Then memory returned, the blizzard, the stranger on horseback, the warmth of the rocking H, and she sat up with a gasp. Grace! She's fine. A voice from the doorway made Clara whirl. Elijah Thornton stood there, a cup of coffee in his hand, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Fever broke about an hour ago. She's sleeping peaceful now. Rosa's with her. Relief hit Clara so hard she had to grip the edge of the bed to stay upright. Thank God. Thank God. Mrs. Whitmore. Clara. The name came out before she could think better of it. Please. You saved my children's lives. I think we're past formalities. Something shifted in his expression. Clara, then. And you can call me Eli. Everyone does. She nodded, suddenly aware of her disheveled state, her hair loose and tangled, still wearing the dress Rosa had loaned her to sleep in. I should check on the children. They're fine. All 3 of them are in the kitchen with Rosa eating breakfast like they haven't seen food in a week. A pause. Had they seen food in a week? Clara felt her cheeks warm with shame. We had food, but not much. The stagecoach stops were expensive, and I had to ration our money for when we arrived. Eli's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he held out the cup of coffee. Rosa sent this for you. Said you're to drink it and then join them for breakfast. Her orders, not mine. Clara took the cup, her fingers brushing his in the transfer. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she saw from the way Eli's eyes widened slightly that he'd felt it too. The storm, she asked, looking past him to the window. Passed in the night. Roads'll be rough but passable by this afternoon. He stepped back, putting distance between them. "I've sent a man to Silver Creek to let them know you're coming, and to report the stagecoach driver for abandonment." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." His voice was hard. "What that man did was unconscionable. If I find him, he'll answer for it." Clara studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. In the morning light, she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. A face that had seen hardship. A face that, despite its stern set, held a gentleness she was only beginning to understand. "Why did you stay up all night?" The question caught him off guard. "I didn't." "You did. Rosa said you were still watching over the children when she went to bed at midnight, and you were there when Grace's fever broke at dawn." Clara set down the coffee cup and stood crossing the room to stand before him. "Why?" For a long moment Eli didn't answer. Then so quietly she almost missed it. "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what would have happened if I'd been an hour later. If I'd taken the south road instead of the north." "But you weren't. You didn't. This time." His eyes met hers, and in them Clara saw a grief so profound it stole her breath. "I wasn't in time once before. I've never forgiven myself for it." She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. Rosa's words from the night before echoed in her mind. He had a daughter once. Instead of asking questions, Clara did something that surprised them both. She reached out and laid her hand on his arm. "Thank you, Eli, for everything." He looked at her hand, then at her face. For a moment, something raw and unguarded flickered in his expression. Then he stepped back, and the moment passed. "You should eat," he said gruffly. "Rosa makes a good breakfast, and you've got a long journey ahead." Clara nodded, but as she followed him to the kitchen, she found herself replaying that moment over and over in her mind. The way he'd looked at her. The way his arm had tensed under her touch. She'd come to Montana to start a new life for her children. She hadn't expected to find a man whose broken pieces seemed to fit so perfectly against her own. The kitchen of the Rocking H smelled of bacon and fresh bread, and for a moment, Clara stood in the doorway just watching her children eat. Samuel sat at the long wooden table, shoveling scrambled eggs into his mouth with an enthusiasm she hadn't seen in months. Beside him, Lily buttered a biscuit with careful precision, her posture still guarded, but her shoulders less tense than they'd been since Boston. And Grace was sitting up in Rosa's lap, nibbling on a piece of toast, her color still pale, but her eyes bright and alert. "Mama." The little girl's face lit up when she saw Clara. "The nice lady made me special tea with honey. She says it'll make my throat stop hurting." Clara's vision blurred. She crossed the room and knelt beside Rosa's chair, pressing her hand to Grace's forehead. "Cool. Blessedly wonderfully cool. How do you feel, sweetheart?" "Tired, but not cold anymore." Grace reached out to touch Clara's face. "Were you scared Mama Lily said we almost died in the snow?" Clara shot a look at her eldest daughter, who suddenly became very interested in her biscuit. "We had an adventure," Clara said carefully. "But a very kind man helped us find this warm house. Do you remember?" Grace nodded solemnly. "The man with sad eyes. He carried me." Out of the mouths of babes. Clara glanced toward the doorway where Eli had been standing moments ago, but he was gone. "Eat your breakfast, Mrs. Whitmore." Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. "There's plenty, and you need your strength. The road to Silver Creek won't be easy, even with the storm past." Clara settled into a chair across from her children and accepted the plate Rosa set before her. Bacon, eggs, biscuits, and preserves, more food than they'd seen at one meal since leaving Boston. "I don't know how to repay your kindness," she said. Rosa waved a dismissive hand. "Kindness isn't a debt. It's a gift. You pass it on when you can, that's all." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the clink of cutlery and Samuel's occasional requests for more milk. Clara found herself relaxing incrementally, the terror of the previous night loosening its grip on her chest. Then Lily spoke, her voice carefully neutral. "Mama, what happens when we get to Silver Creek?" "I find the doctor who placed the advertisement. I start work. We find a place to live." "What if they don't want us?" The question hung in the air. Clara set down her fork. "What do you mean?" Lily's jaw tightened, so like her father when he was trying not to show weakness. "The stagecoach driver didn't want us. The boarding house in Chicago didn't want us. That family on the train who said they'd share their compartment and then changed their minds when they saw we had 3 children. Lily, nobody wants a widow with 3 children, Mama. You said so yourself. I heard you crying in Boston after the creditors came. You said we were—" "That's enough." Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. She saw Samuel's face crumple, saw Grace shrink against Rosa's chest, and forced herself to take a breath. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. But Lily, what I said in a moment of despair is not the truth of our situation." "Then what is—" Clara looked at her daughter, really looked at her. At the dark circles under her eyes, the premature worry lines on her young forehead, the way she held herself like she was bracing for a blow. This child had lost her father, lost her home, lost every friend she'd ever known. And instead of being allowed to grieve, she'd had to watch her mother scramble to survive, had to become a second parent to her younger siblings. Clara reached across the table and took Lily's hand. "The truth is that we are going to be fine. Not because people want us. You're right, many people don't. But because we have each other. Because your mother is a trained midwife, and babies don't stop being born just because their mothers are inconvenient. Because—" She stopped. Because what? Because she believed in happy endings. She didn't. Not anymore. Because we refuse to give up. She finished quietly. That's all we can do, Lily. Refuse to give up. Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm scared, Mama." "I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too." "You are terrified. Every single day." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. "But being scared doesn't mean we stop moving forward. It just means we're paying attention." Rosa made a soft sound that might have been approval. Grace, oblivious to the emotional undercurrents, held up her toast. "Mama, can I have more honey?" The tension broke. Clara laughed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, and Rosa rose to fetch the honey pot. It was into this fragile moment of peace that Eli walked, his expression grim. "We've got a problem." Clara's heart dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The bridge over Miller's Creek is out. Ice dam must have given way in the night and took the crossing with it." He removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. "There's no way to get to Silver Creek by wagon. Not for at least 3, maybe 4 days until the water goes down enough to ford." 4 days. Clara's mind raced through the implications. 4 more days of imposing on these strangers hospitality. 4 more days of her children eating their food, sleeping in their beds. 4 more days before she could start working, start earning, start building the life she'd promised her children. "There must be another way," she said. "A longer route, perhaps." "There is, but it adds 2 days to the journey and takes you through some rough country. With 3 young ones, one of them just recovered from fever." Eli shook his head. "I wouldn't recommend it." "Then we wait." The words tasted bitter in Clara's mouth. "I'm sorry to impose on your hospitality further, Mr. Thornton." "Eli," he corrected her. "And it's no imposition. The rocking H has plenty of room, and Rosa's been wanting someone to fuss over besides me." Rosa snorted. "You could use more fussing. When's the last time you ate a proper meal that wasn't standing up in the barn?" "That's not—" "Yesterday. The answer is yesterday. And the day before that." Rosa shook her head. "This man works himself to the bone and forgets he's made of flesh, not iron." Clara watched the exchange with growing curiosity. There was genuine affection between these two, but also something else, an unspoken understanding, the kind that came from years of shared history. You said you've been here 7 years, she said to Eli. That's a long time. Long enough? His tone didn't invite further questions, but Clara pressed anyway. Rosa mentioned you came from Ohio, after the war. Eli's expression shuddered. That's right. My father was from Ohio. Samuel piped up, apparently recovered from his earlier distress. He said it was boring there. That's why he moved to Boston to make his fortune. Clara's chest tightened. Daniel had indeed moved to Boston to make his fortune. What he'd actually done was lose 3 fortunes, hers, his family's, and their children's future at the card tables. Samuel, she began. Did you fight in the war, Mr. Thornton? Samuel continued undeterred. Mama's papa fought. He died at Antietam. I never met him. Samuel, that's enough. Clara's voice was firm. Mr. Thornton's past is his own business. But Eli was looking at her with an odd expression. Your father died at Antietam. Yes, I was 12. Union or Confederate? Union. Massachusetts Infantry. Eli nodded slowly. I was at Antietam. Union Cavalry, Ohio Volunteers. He paused. Bloodiest day of the war. I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago. Some losses don't get smaller with time. Their eyes met, and Clara felt that strange jolt again, that sense of recognition of 2 broken pieces clicking together. The moment was broken by a commotion from outside. Hoofbeats several horses by the sound of it approaching fast. Eli was at the window in 2 strides. His posture went rigid. Rosa, take the children to the back room. What is it? Clara rose, her heart hammering. Riders. 4 of them. Eli's hand moved to the gun at his hip. And unless I miss my guess, the one in front is Silas Crenshaw. Rosa's face went pale. She gathered the children with quick efficiency grace in her arms, Samuel's hand in hers, Lily following close behind. Who is Silas Crenshaw? Clara demanded. Someone you don't want to meet. Eli moved toward the door. Stay inside. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. Eli. He was already gone. Clara stood frozen for a moment, torn between the instinct to hide with her children and the need to know what was happening. Then she moved to the window, pressing herself against the wall so she could see without being seen. 4 men on horseback had stopped in front of the house. The one in the lead was well-dressed, too well-dressed for a Montana ranch hand. Clean wool coat, polished boots, a hat that hadn't seen a day's honest work. His face was handsome, in a slick way that immediately put Clara on edge. Eli walked out to meet them, his stance relaxed, but his hand still near his gun. Crenshaw. What brings you to the Rocking H? Thornton. The well-dressed man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I heard you had some visitors last night. A woman and her children stranded in the blizzard. News travels fast. In a small territory it does. Crenshaw leaned forward in his saddle. The stagecoach driver told an interesting story in town this morning. Said he had to leave some passengers behind when his wheel broke. Said he rode through the night to get help. Is that what he said? It is. Quite the heroic tale. Crenshaw's smile widened. Of course, I couldn't help noticing that his horses looked remarkably fresh for having carried a man through a blizzard, and his coat was dry, almost as if he'd been sitting by a warm fire instead of braving the elements. Clara's hands clenched into fists. The stagecoach driver hadn't broken a wheel. He'd abandoned them deliberately, then gone back to town and lied about it. What do you want, Crenshaw? Eli's voice had gone flat. I want to meet the woman. Mrs. Whitmore. I believe her name is a midwife from Boston. That's quite a journey for a widow with 3 young children. She's resting. The children, too. They had a hard night. I'm sure they did. Crenshaw's eyes moved past Eli to the house, and Clara pressed herself further back from the window. Nevertheless, I'd like to extend a welcome. Silver Creek is my town after all. Silver Creek doesn't belong to anyone. That's a matter of opinion. Crenshaw's voice hardened. I've invested considerable resources in that town, Thornton. The saloon, the hotel, the general store. I have a vested interest in anyone who plans to set up shop there. A midwife isn't competition for your businesses. Everyone is competition in one way or another. Crenshaw smiled again. But I'm not here to argue. I'm here to extend an invitation. When Mrs. Whitmore is ready to travel, I'd be happy to provide her an escort into town. My men know the roads better than anyone, and the bridge being out complicates things. We'll manage. Will you? Crenshaw's gaze was sharp. The crossing at Widow's Ford is still passable, but it's rough country between here and there. Not safe for a woman alone with children. She won't be alone. The words hung in the air between the two men. Clara watched Crenshaw's expression flicker, surprise, then calculation, then something that looked like anger quickly suppressed. I see. Crenshaw straightened in his saddle. Well, when you change your mind, send word to my office in town. The offer stands. He wheeled his horse around and rode away, his men following. Eli stood watching until they disappeared from sight. When he came back inside, his face was dark. Who was that? Clara demanded. What does he want? Silas Crenshaw owns half of Silver Creek, or thinks he does. Eli moved to the window, checking that the riders were truly gone. He's been buying up land and businesses for the past 3 years. Anyone who gets in his way tends to have accidents. Accidents? Fires, floods, equipment failures. Always something that can't be traced back to him, but everyone knows. Clara's stomach turned. And now he's interested in me. He's interested in everyone who comes to town, especially anyone who might not be under his thumb. Eli turned to face her. You said you answered an advertisement for a midwife. Who placed it? I don't know. It just said Silver Creek Community and had a post office box. Eli's expression grew darker. The post office is in the general store, which Crenshaw owns. The implication hit Clara like a physical blow. You think he placed the advertisement that he brought me here deliberately? I don't know, but I don't like coincidences, and this is a big one. Clara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. She'd thought leaving Boston was an escape from debt, from shame, from a society that had no place for her. Instead, she might have walked directly into something worse. What do I do? The question came out barely above a whisper. Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. You have options. You could go back east. I'll give you money for the fare, enough to get you and the children somewhere safe. I can't take your money. You can. And you'd be repaying me by staying alive. Clara shook her head. Even if I wanted to go back, there's nothing there. No home, no family, no prospects. At least here I have a skill people need. People here have survived without a midwife before. And how many women have died in childbirth? How many babies? Clara's voice hardened. I'm good at what I do, Eli. I trained under one of the best doctors in Boston. I've delivered over 200 babies, including breech presentations and twins. I've saved lives that other midwives would have written off as God's will. Eli studied her face. You really believe that? I know it. And if there are women in Silver Creek who need my help, I won't abandon them just because some man with too much money wants to control everyone. Something shifted in Eli's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. All right, he said finally. Then here's what we do. You stay at the Rocking H until the bridge is repaired. When you go to Silver Creek, I go with you. I introduce you to the people I trust. Doc Aldrich, Sheriff Wade Garrett, the Brennan family. They're good people, and they'll help you get established. And Crenshaw? Leave Crenshaw to me. That's not an answer. Eli's jaw tightened. Crenshaw and I have history. He's been trying to push the Rocking H out for years, wants our water rights, our grazing land. So far, he hasn't succeeded. Having you as an ally might be useful to him, or it might make you a target. Either way, you'll be safer with people watching your back." Clara thought about this. About the man sitting across from her, who had pulled her family out of a blizzard and was now offering to protect them from a different kind of storm. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to us?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He leaned back, his expression closing off. "I told you. I had a daughter once." "And that's the only reason?" Their eyes met. Held. "No," Eli said quietly. "It's not." Before Clara could respond, Rosa appeared in the doorway with the children. "All clear." Eli stood abruptly, the moment broken. "For now. But keep the children close today. No playing outside." "What about school?" Samuel asked. "Lily says I have to do my lessons even when we're traveling." Clara and Eli exchanged a glance. "Your sister is right," Clara said. "Education doesn't stop just because we're guests in someone's home. Do you have books, pencils?" "They're in the bags we left in the wagon," Lily said. "The driver threw them off before he—" She trailed off. Clara's heart sank. Their bags, their few remaining possessions, the children's clothes, her medical supplies, the books she'd brought for their education. All of it was probably buried in a snowdrift somewhere between here and wherever the stagecoach driver had abandoned them. "The driver dropped bags?" Eli asked sharply. "About a mile before he unhitched the horses. He said the weight was slowing them down." Eli's face went thunderous. "What was in them?" "Everything," Clara said hollowly. "Clothes, medicine, books, my midwifery instruments. Your—" Eli stopped himself. "You had medical instruments in those bags. Forceps, scissors, ligatures, things I need to do my work." Clara pressed a hand to her forehead. "God, I didn't even think. I was so focused on getting the children to safety I forgot about the bags." "Can you replace them?" "Some, maybe, if I can find a doctor willing to sell or order supplies." She laughed bitterly. "If I have money to pay for them. If I can find work without them. If... Hey." Eli's hand covered hers, warm and rough. "We'll find them. The snow's stopped. The drifts will start settling. I'll take some men out this afternoon and trace the route you walked. If the bags are there, we'll get them." Clara looked up at him, at this man who kept offering help she hadn't asked for and couldn't repay. "Why?" she asked again. "Why keep helping us?" Rosa, still standing in the doorway with the children, made a small sound, something between a sigh and a laugh. "Because that's who he is," she said simply. "That's who he's always been, even when he wishes he wasn't." Eli didn't argue. He just held Clara's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "I'll leave within the hour," he said finally. "Rosa will take care of you. And Clara?" He paused at the door. "When I get back, we need to talk. About Crenshaw. About Silver Creek. About—" He stopped, shook his head. "About everything." Then he was gone, and Clara was left with her children and Rosa and 1,000 questions she didn't know how to ask. The afternoon stretched long and strange. Rosa kept everyone busy, the children with chores and simple games, Clara with mending and meal preparation. It was clear the older woman was trying to distract them from worry, and Clara was grateful for it. But as the hours passed and the light began to fade, Clara found herself returning again and again to the window, watching the road for Eli's return. "He'll be fine," Rosa said, coming to stand beside her. "Eli knows this land better than anyone. If your bags are out there, he'll find them." "It's not just the bags." Rosa nodded slowly. "No, I didn't think it was." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then, "Tell me about him, about his family." "That's his story to tell, not mine." "But he won't tell it. Every time I get close, he shuts down." Rosa sighed. "He had a wife, Martha, and a little girl, Rose. They died 7 years ago, scarlet fever. Eli wasn't there. He was in Cheyenne buying horses for the ranch. By the time he got home, they were already gone. Buried. He didn't even get to say goodbye. Rosa's voice was heavy with old sorrow. He hasn't been the same since. Works himself to exhaustion, keeps everyone at arm's length. I've watched him push away every woman who's shown interest in him, even the good ones. Then why is he helping me? Rosa turned to look at Clara directly. I've been asking myself that since he carried you through that door last night. And the only answer I can come up with. She paused. Something in you got through to him. Something in those children. I don't know what it is or what it means, but I haven't seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you since before Martha died. Clara's heart hammered. He barely knows me. Sometimes that's all it takes. One look, one moment, and everything changes. Before Clara could respond, the sound of hoofbeats reached them. She was at the door before she consciously decided to move, pulling it open to see Eli riding toward the house. Behind him, another rider led a pack horse loaded with bags. Their bags. Clara was off the porch and running before she could stop herself. She reached Eli just as he dismounted, and without thinking, without caring about propriety or what it might mean, she threw her arms around him. You found them. Eli went rigid for a moment. Then slowly his arms came around her. Told you I would. I didn't dare believe. Her voice broke. God, Eli. Thank you. Thank you. Hey. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. I told you. We're going to get through this. All of you. The children had spilled out of the house now, Samuel running to examine the recovered bags, Lily following with Grace in her arms. Their excited voices filled the cold air, but Clara barely heard them. She was too focused on Eli's face, on the way he was looking at her, on the words he'd used. All of you. Not you and the children. Not your family. All of you. Like they were already a unit. Like he was already part of it. Eli, she said softly. What is this? What's happening between us? He didn't answer. But he didn't look away either. And when his hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, his touch was so gentle that Clara felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm tired of pretending it isn't happening. And standing there in the fading light, surrounded by her children's laughter and the weight of everything they'd survived, Clara Whitmore made a decision. She was tired of pretending too. 3 days passed at the Rocking H, and Clara found herself settling into a rhythm she hadn't expected. Mornings began with breakfast in Rosa's warm kitchen, the children helping with chores, while Clara organized her recovered medical supplies. Afternoons brought lessons for the children, and quiet conversations with Rosa about life in Montana Territory. And evenings brought Eli. He came to the main house every night after his ranch work was done, dusty and tired, but always with time for the children. Samuel followed him like a shadow, peppering him with questions about horses and cattle and life as a cowboy. Grace demanded stories before bed, and Eli obliged with tales of wild mustangs and hidden mountain valleys that made her eyes grow wide. Even Lily, who had remained wary of most adults since her father's death, began to thaw under Eli's patient attention. Clara watched it all with a mixture of joy and terror. Joy because her children were happy, truly happy, for the first time in over a year. Terror because she knew it couldn't last. In a day or two, the bridge would be repaired, and they would leave for Silver Creek. Leave Eli. Leave this unexpected haven. Leave whatever was growing between them. On the fourth morning, Clara woke to find Eli already gone. Rosa explained that he'd ridden out before dawn to check on the bridge repairs. Should be done today, Rosa said, not quite meeting Clara's eyes. Maybe tomorrow at the latest. Clara nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling in her chest. That's good news. We've imposed on your hospitality long enough. You haven't imposed. You've been a blessing. Rosa's voice was firm. This house has been too quiet for too long. Having children here again, hearing laughter in these rooms. She stopped shaking her head. Eli won't say it, but it's been good for him too. Rosa, I know, it's not my place. The older woman turned back to her cooking. But someone should say it even if he won't. That man cares for you, Clara, more than he's cared for anyone since Martha. Clara's throat tightened. We've known each other less than a week. Time doesn't matter, not out here, not when you find the right person. Rosa looked at her directly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Clara could answer, the sound of horses reached them. Multiple horses moving fast. Rosa's face went pale. That's not Eli. He took one horse. Clara was already moving toward the window. 4 riders were approaching from the east, the same direction Crenshaw had come from days ago. Take the children to the back room. Clara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Lock the door. Clara, you can't. Rosa, please. My children. The older woman hesitated, then nodded. She gathered the children with quiet efficiency, Grace still half asleep, Samuel protesting, Lily silent and watchful, and disappeared down the hallway. Clara took a breath, then another. Then she walked to the door and opened it. The riders had stopped in front of the house. 3 of them were rough-looking men. She didn't recognize their faces hard, and their hands resting on holstered guns. The 4th was Silas Crenshaw, immaculate as before, in his expensive coat and polished boots. Mrs. Whitmore. He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. Good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting. Mr. Crenshaw, I wasn't expecting visitors. I apologize for the surprise, but I have news that couldn't wait. He dismounted, handing his reins to one of his men. May I come inside? I'd prefer you didn't. Something flickered in Crenshaw's eyes, anger quickly suppressed. Of course, I understand. A woman alone must be cautious. He spread his hands. Then I'll deliver my news here. The bridge has been repaired. As of this morning, the road to Silver Creek is open. Clara's heart lurched. That's good news. I thought so, which is why I came personally to offer you an escort into town. Crenshaw smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The roads can be treacherous for those unfamiliar with the territory, and I understand you'll be taking up the midwife position we advertised. The Silver Creek Business Association, I'm the president. His smile widened. We've been looking forward to your arrival, Mrs. Whitmore. A town needs a good midwife, especially one with your qualifications. The way he said the word made Clara's skin crawl. How do you know my qualifications? I make it my business to know things. For instance, I know you trained under Dr. Edmund Blackwell at Massachusetts General. I know you delivered the governor's grandchild successfully, despite a complicated breech presentation. And I know that your late husband left you with debts that forced you to sell everything you owned. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. You've done your research. I like to know who's coming to my town. Crenshaw took a step closer. I also know that you turned down 3 positions in Boston because they required you to leave your children in the care of strangers. Admirable maternal devotion, but it does leave you in a vulnerable position. Is that a threat, Mr. Crenshaw? Not at all. It's an observation. He reached into his coat pocket and produced a folded document. This is a contract. Standard terms for medical practitioners in Silver Creek. Housing provided, salary guaranteed, plus a percentage of fees collected. All you have to do is sign. Clara didn't take the document. And what do you get in return? Your loyalty, your cooperation, your discretion in certain matters. Crenshaw's eyes were cold, despite his pleasant expression. Silver Creek has its share of secrets, Mrs. Whitmore. I find it's best when everyone understands their role. And if I don't sign, then you're welcome to try your luck elsewhere. Of course, the nearest town with a need for a midwife is over 200 miles away, and winter travel with 3 young children. He shrugged. Well, you've already experienced how dangerous that can be. Clara's blood ran cold. The stagecoach driver. Crenshaw had known about the abandonment, had probably ordered it. The whole thing had been designed to make her desperate dependent, willing to accept whatever terms he offered. "You're a monster," she whispered. Crenshaw's smile didn't waver. "I'm a businessman. There's a difference." He held out the contract again. "Sign the paper, Mrs. Whitmore. Take the easy path. Your children will thank you for it." Clara looked at the document in his hand. Thought about her children hiding in the back room. Thought about the long road she'd traveled to get here, the sacrifices she'd made, the promises she'd made to herself. Then she thought about Eli. "No." Crenshaw's eyebrows rose. "No. I won't sign anything that makes me beholden to you. I'll find my own housing set, my own terms, build my own practice." Clara lifted her chin. "And if you think you can threaten me into compliance, you're wrong." For a long moment, Crenshaw just looked at her. Then he laughed a cold, humorless sound. "I admire your spirit, Mrs. Whitmore. I truly do. But spirit doesn't keep children fed. Spirit doesn't put a roof over your head." He tucked the contract back into his pocket. "You have 1 week. After that, my offer expires. And you'll find that Silver Creek isn't as welcoming to those who aren't under my protection." He turned to mount his horse, then paused. "Oh, one more thing. I'd advise you to be careful about the company you keep. Elijah Thornton has a habit of losing the people closest to him. His wife, his daughter, his... Get off this property." Eli's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Clara spun to see him approaching on horseback from the west, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Crenshaw's smile returned sharper now. "Thornton, we were just discussing you." "I heard." Eli dismounted and walked toward Crenshaw, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "You've got about 30 seconds to leave before I stop being polite. There's no need for hostility. I was simply welcoming Mrs. Whitmore to the territory. By threatening her children. By offering her a business opportunity." Crenshaw mounted his horse, looking down at them both with an expression of cool amusement. "But I can see I'm not wanted. Mrs. Whitmore, remember what I said. 1 week." He rode away, his men following. Eli watched them go, his jaw tight, his body rigid with tension. When the riders were out of sight, he turned to Clara. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "No, he just..." Clara shook her head, suddenly exhausted. "He made his expectations clear." "What expectations?" "He wants me under his control. Wants me to sign a contract, be loyal to him, keep his secrets." She laughed bitterly. "Apparently the whole thing, the advertisement, the stagecoach, all of it was designed to put me in his debt." Eli's expression darkened. "I was afraid of that." "You knew." "I suspected. Crenshaw doesn't do anything without a purpose. When I heard a midwife was coming all the way from Boston, I wondered why he'd cast his net so far." He took her hands, his grip warm and solid. "I'm sorry, Clara. I should have warned you sooner." "What would you have warned me about? I didn't have any other options." "You have options now." Clara looked at him. This man who had saved her children, recovered her belongings, stood between her and a dangerous man without hesitation. This man whose eyes held such pain and such hope in equal measure. "What options?" she asked quietly. Eli took a breath. "Stay here." "At the Rocking H." "Yes. We have families on the ranch, wives and children of the hands. They need a midwife too. I can have a cabin ready for you by week's end, separate quarters, respectable and proper." His grip tightened on her hands. "You'd be safe here. Crenshaw has no jurisdiction on Rocking H land. And the children would grow up thinking we're charity cases. That's not what I'm offering." "Then what are you offering Eli?" The question hung between them. Clara watched emotions chase across his face, hope, fear, longing, doubt. "I'm offering you a home," he said finally. "A place where you and your children can build a life without someone like Crenshaw controlling you. A community that will value you for who you are, not what they can get from you." And what about you? Eli was silent. Rosa told me about Martha, Clara said softly. About Rose. About how you've pushed everyone away since they died. Rosa talks too much. She cares about you. So do I. Clara stepped closer. I'm not asking you to marry me, Eli. I'm not asking for promises you can't keep. But if you're offering me a home on this ranch, I need to know why. I need to know what you're hoping for. For a long moment, Eli didn't answer. Then he reached up his calloused hand, cupping her face with infinite gentleness. I'm hoping, he said quietly, that you'll give me a chance. That you'll let me prove I can be there for you and your children. That someday maybe you'll feel about me what I already feel about you. Clara's breath caught. And what do you feel? Like I've been dead for 7 years and you brought me back to life. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. Eli, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer ever if that's not what you want. He wiped her tears with his thumb. But I needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever you decide, I needed you to know the truth. Clara looked at this man, this wounded, noble, impossibly stubborn man, and felt something break open in her chest. Something that had been locked away since before Daniel's death, since before she'd stopped believing in happy endings. My children adore you, she whispered. I adore them. Lily barely trusts anyone anymore, but she trusts you. She's a good girl, strong like her mother. And Grace? Clara's voice broke. Grace asked me yesterday if you could be her new papa. Eli's eyes glistened. What did you tell her? I told her that wasn't my decision to make. Clara took a shaking breath. But I was wrong. It is my decision. And The sound of galloping hooves shattered the moment. Clara and Eli spun to see a rider approaching at dangerous speed, one of the ranch hands, his face white with panic. Eli! The man barely stopped his horse before he was shouting. Trouble at the north pasture. Crenshaw's men are cutting fences. Miguel tried to stop them and they shot him. Eli's face went blank with shock, then hard with rage. How bad? Bad. They were dragging him toward the creek when I rode for help. Eli was already moving toward his horse. Clara, get inside. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Eli, wait. But he was gone, spurring his horse toward the north pasture, the other rider following. Clara stood frozen, watching him disappear, her heart in her throat. Inside, she found Rosa already gathering the children. I heard, the older woman said, her face grim. We need to move to the cellar. If Crenshaw's making a move now, he's not going to hurt us. We're not valuable to him dead. He might not hurt you, but making a point about what happens when people cross him. Rosa shook her head. He's capable of anything. Clara thought about Grace, about Samuel, about Lily's young face, already marked by too much loss. The cellar, she agreed. Now. They moved quickly, Rosa leading the way with a lantern, while Clara carried Grace and held Samuel's hand. Lily followed behind her, face pale but determined. The cellar was cool and dark, stocked with preserved food and emergency supplies. Rosa had clearly prepared for situations like this before. How long do we wait? Samuel asked, his voice small. Until someone comes for us, Clara said. Uncle Eli or Rosa's friends? Uncle Eli. The name had slipped out without thinking, and Samuel's face lit up at it. Uncle Eli will save Miguel, the boy said with absolute confidence. He saves everyone. Clara pulled her son close, praying that his faith wasn't misplaced. Time passed strangely in the cellar. Minutes felt like hours. Grace fell asleep in Clara's lap. Samuel dozed against Lily's shoulder. Rosa sat by the door with a rifle across her knees, a precaution Clara was grateful for. And Clara sat in the darkness thinking about Eli, about the look on his face when he'd told her she'd brought him back to life, About the way he'd touched her cheek so gentle for hands that were so strong. About the fact that she hadn't gotten to tell him she felt the same way. When footsteps finally sounded above them, Clara's heart nearly stopped. Rosa raised the rifle. Clara pulled the children behind her. Lily grabbed a heavy jar from the nearest shelf, holding it like a weapon. The cellar door opened. Eli stood silhouetted against the daylight, his clothes dusty, and his face streaked with something dark. Blood, Clara realized. But whose? "It's over," he said. "You can come up." Clara scrambled up the ladder, needing to see him touch him, confirm he was real. "Miguel. Alive. Shot in the shoulder, but Doc Aldrich is with him now." Eli caught her as she reached the top, steadying her. "Crenshaw's men scattered when we arrived. Cowards, every one of them." "And Crenshaw?" Eli's jaw tightened. "Gone. Back to Silver Creek, probably." He looked at her, and despite everything, the fear, the violence, the chaos, his eyes softened. "Are you all right?" "I am now." She pulled him into her arms, not caring who saw, not caring about propriety or what it might mean. She just needed to hold him, to feel his heartbeat against her chest, to know he was alive. Eli's arms came around her, holding her tight. "I didn't get to finish," Clara whispered against his shoulder. "Finish what?" "Telling you what I decided." She pulled back just enough to look at his face. "About staying. About us." Eli went very still. "Clara, you don't have to." "I want to." She touched his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I want to stay. I want to build a life here with you. I want my children to grow up with someone who loves them as much as you do." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Eli's breath shuddered out of him. Then he was kissing her, a real kiss, not gentle or cautious, but fierce and full of longing, full of all the things they hadn't been able to say. From the cellar ladder below, Grace's sleepy voice floated up. "Mama, is Uncle Eli kissing you?" Clara laughed against Eli's lips. "Yes, sweetheart, he is." "Good," Grace said with satisfaction. "I told you he should be my new papa." And standing there in the aftermath of danger, holding a man she hadn't known existed a week ago, Clara Whitmore finally allowed herself to believe in happy endings after all. But she didn't know, couldn't have known, that the real danger was still coming. That Crenshaw's retreat was strategic, not permanent. That by nightfall, everything would change again. For now, she simply held on to Eli and let herself hope. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Doc Aldrich arrived to tend to Miguel's wound, pronouncing it serious, but not life-threatening. Sheriff Wade Garrett came with 2 deputies, taking statements about the fence cutting and the shooting. And through it all, Clara found herself watching Eli, the way he commanded respect without demanding it, the way the ranch hands looked to him for direction, the way he handled the crisis with calm efficiency. This was the man she had chosen. This was the life she was stepping into. By late afternoon, the immediate chaos had settled. Miguel was resting comfortably, the deputies had ridden out to search for Crenshaw's men, and the damaged fences had been temporarily repaired. Clara found Eli standing alone by the corral, staring out at the distant mountains. "You should rest," she said, coming to stand beside him. "You've been going since before dawn." "Can't rest. Not yet." His voice was heavy. "Crenshaw won't stop. What happened today was just the beginning." "What do you mean?" Eli turned to face her. "He's been trying to push the Rocking H out for 3 years. Water rights, grazing land, access to the railroad, we control things he wants. But Mr. Reeves wouldn't sell, and I wouldn't be intimidated." He paused. "Now there's you. Me. You refused him. Publicly. In front of his men." Eli's expression was grim. "Men like Crenshaw can't let that stand. It makes him look weak." Clara's stomach tightened. "So what happens now?" "I don't know. But I'm not letting you or the children out of my sight until this is settled." He took her hands, his grip almost painfully tight. "Clara, I need you to understand something. If you stay here, if you commit to building a life with me, you're making an enemy of Silas Crenshaw. And that's not a small thing." "I understand." "Do you—" "He's burned out homesteaders. He's driven families off land they'd worked for years. He's—" Eli stopped his jaw working. "I can protect you. I swear I will do everything in my power to keep you and your children safe. But I can't promise there won't be danger." Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached up and touched his face. "Daniel, my husband. He promised me safety too. A comfortable life, a secure future. And every promise he made he broke." Her voice was steady. "You've known me for 6 days, Eli. In that time you've saved my children's lives, recovered our belongings, stood between me and a dangerous man, and offered us a home. You've shown me more honesty in less than a week than Daniel showed me in 12 years of marriage. Clara, I'm not a woman who frightens easily. I walked through a blizzard with a dying child in my arms. I left everything I knew to travel 2,000 miles into the unknown." She stepped closer. "If Silas Crenshaw thinks he can scare me into submission, he's going to be very disappointed." Something shifted in Eli's expression, relief, pride, and something deeper that made Clara's breath catch. "God, you're remarkable," he murmured. "I'm practical. There's a difference." He laughed a real laugh, warm and unexpected. "Is that what you call it?" "That's what I call surviving." She smiled. "Now, are you going to kiss me again, or do I have to wait for another crisis?" Eli didn't need to be asked twice. The kiss was different from before, slower, deeper, full of promise rather than desperation. Clara melted into it, her hands fisting in the fabric of his shirt, her heart pounding against her ribs. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eli rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me." Clara's heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me." His voice was rough. "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I've spent 7 years waiting to feel something again, and now that I do—" He pulled back to look at her directly. "I don't want to waste another day. Not one more day without you being mine and me being yours." "Eli, you don't have to answer now. You can take all the time you need. But I needed to say it. I needed you to know that what I feel isn't temporary. It isn't convenience or obligation or anything other than—" He took a shaky breath. "I love you, Clara. I love your children, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it." Tears streamed down Clara's face. She didn't bother wiping them away. "Yes." Eli went very still. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." She laughed through her tears. "You impossible, stubborn, wonderful man. Yes." He kissed her again, fierce and joyful and overflowing with emotion. Clara clung to him, hardly believing this was real, hardly believing that after everything she'd endured, happiness was actually possible. "Mama!" They broke apart to find all 3 children standing at the edge of the corral. Samuel's eyes were wide, Lily's mouth hung open, and Grace was bouncing with excitement. "Did Uncle Eli ask you to marry him?" Grace demanded. "Did you say yes? Is he going to be our papa now?" Clara looked at Eli, who was watching the children with an expression of naked hope. "What do you think?" she asked them. "Would you like Eli to be part of our family?" Samuel's response was immediate. "Yes, he can teach me to ride and rope cattle and—" "I haven't even learned to ride yet." Eli pointed out, his voice rough with emotion. "Then we'll learn together." Lily was quieter. She studied Eli with those 2 old eyes, the ones that had seen too much disappointment for someone so young. "Will you stay?" she asked finally. "Really stay? Not leave like Papa did?" Eli crouched down to her level. "Your papa didn't choose to leave Lily. He got sick. He left before that. Even when he was there, he wasn't really there." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. "I heard them fighting. I heard Mama crying. I know he was supposed to love us, but sometimes it didn't feel like he did." Clara's heart broke at her daughter's words. She'd tried so hard to shield the children from the worst of Daniel's failures, but children saw more than adults gave them credit for. Eli didn't look away from Lily's searching gaze. "I can't promise I'll never make mistakes. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you. But I can promise you this." He reached out and took the girl's hand. "I will never choose anything over this family. Not cards, not drink, not work, not anything. You and your brother and your sister and your mother, you will always come first. Always." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay," she said. "You can marry Mama." Grace squealed and launched herself at Eli, nearly knocking him over. Samuel joined her, wrapping his arms around Eli's neck. And Lily, reserved, cautious Lily, stepped forward and allowed herself to be pulled into the embrace. Clara watched them through tear-blurred eyes. Her children, her beautiful broken children, finally allowing themselves to trust again. And this man, this wounded nobleman, holding them like they were the most precious things in the world. "Come here," Eli said, his voice thick, and Clara went to him, joining the tangle of arms and laughter and tears. For a moment, everything else faded away. Crenshaw, the danger, the uncertainty of the future. There was only this family, this love, this impossible, improbable miracle. Then Rosa's voice shattered the moment. "Eli, riders coming, at least a dozen, maybe more." They broke apart. Eli was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to his gun. "Get the children inside," he ordered Clara. "Now." "Eli." "Now, Clara." She gathered the children, their joy turning to fear in an instant, and ran toward the house. Behind her, she heard Eli shouting orders to the ranch hands, heard the thunder of approaching hooves growing louder. Inside, Rosa was already loading rifles. "Take the children to the cellar," Clara said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I'm staying up here." "Clara, you can't." "I can load a rifle. I can shoot if I have to. And I won't hide while the man I love faces danger alone." Rosa stared at her for a moment, then nodded. "Lily, take your brother and sister downstairs. Don't come out until someone calls for you." Lily hesitated, her face pale. "Mama." "Go, sweetheart. I'll be fine. Uncle Eli will be fine. But I need to know you're safe." The girl nodded, taking Grace's hand and shepherding Samuel toward the cellar. Clara watched them go, praying she hadn't just lied to her daughter. Then she took the rifle Rosa handed her and moved to the window. The riders had stopped at the edge of the property, a dozen men, maybe more, heavily armed. And at their head, sitting tall in his saddle, like a king surveying his domain, was Silas Crenshaw. "Thornton." His voice carried across the distance. "I believe we have unfinished business." Eli stepped forward, his posture relaxed, but his hand never straying from his gun. "This is private property, Crenshaw. You're not welcome here." "I'm not looking for a welcome. I'm looking for what's mine. Nothing here belongs to you." Crenshaw smiled, that cold, predatory smile that made Clara's skin crawl. "That's where you're wrong. Mrs. Whitmore made certain promises before she left Boston, financial obligations that weren't fully satisfied." Clara's blood ran cold. The debts, Daniel's debts. She'd paid what she could, sold everything to satisfy the largest creditors. But there had been smaller ones, men she'd assumed had written off their losses. "I purchased those debts," Crenshaw continued. "Every last one of them. Mrs. Whitmore owes me $3,427. His smile widened. "Unless, of course, she'd prefer to work off her obligation in other ways." Eli's voice was ice. "She doesn't owe you anything. The law says otherwise. I have documents, contracts, all perfectly legal." Crenshaw spread his hands. "I'm not an unreasonable man, Thornton. Turn over the woman and her children, and this doesn't have to get ugly. Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." Clara watched Eli's hand move closer to his gun. Around him, the ranch hands had formed a defensive line, 6 men against Crenshaw's 12. The odds were not good. She made a decision. Before Rosa could stop her, Clara walked out the front door and down the steps, her rifle held loosely at her side. "Clara, no!" Eli's voice was anguished. "Get back inside." She ignored him, walking until she stood beside him facing Crenshaw directly. "You bought my husband's debts," she said. "Why?" Crenshaw's eyebrows rose. "Mrs. Whitmore, how brave of you to join us." "Answer the question." "Very well. I needed a midwife, a good one properly trained, and I needed her to be cooperative." He shrugged. "When I learned of your situation, it seemed like Providence. A skilled midwife desperate for work, burdened with debts she could never repay. All I had to do was bring you west and wait for you to fall into my arms. Except I didn't fall." "No, you didn't." His expression hardened. "You found yourself a protector instead. How fortunate for you." "I found a partner. There's a difference. Partner, protector. It won't matter in the end." Crenshaw gestured to his men. "I have the law on my side, Mrs. Whitmore. Those debts are legal and binding. You can fight me if you want, but you'll lose, and your children will suffer for your pride." Clara's grip tightened on her rifle. "Don't you dare threaten my children." "I'm not threatening, I'm stating facts." Crenshaw leaned forward in his saddle. "Come with me now willingly, and I'll be generous. I'll give you a position, a salary, a decent place to live. Your children will be cared for. But if you force me to take you, you won't be taking her anywhere." A new voice, calm, authoritative, unexpected. Clara turned to see a man riding toward them from the east. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a bearing that spoke of command. Behind him rode Sheriff Garrett and 4 deputies. Crenshaw's face went pale. "Reeves." "Silas." The older man, Mr. Reeves, Clara realized the owner of the Rocking H, stopped his horse between Crenshaw's men and the ranch. "I thought we had an understanding. You stay off my land, I don't expose your business practices to the territorial marshal." "This doesn't concern you, Reeves. This is a private debt matter." "Everything that happens on my ranch concerns me." Reeves's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were steel. "And I couldn't help noticing that you brought a small army onto my property to collect a debt from a woman who's been here less than a week. She owes me money." "Does she?" Reeves turned to Clara. "Mrs. Whitmore, I don't believe we've met. I'm James Reeves. I own this ranch." Clara straightened her spine. "Mr. Reeves, I apologize for bringing trouble to your doorstep." "Nonsense. Trouble found you, not the other way around." He looked at Eli, something passing between them that Clara couldn't read. "My foreman tells me you're quite remarkable. A midwife from Boston trained at Massachusetts General. That you walked 3 miles through a blizzard to save your children." "I did what any mother would do." "Not any mother. A special one." Reeves smiled. "I'd like to offer you a position, Mrs. Whitmore. Here at the Rocking H, room and board for you and your children, plus a salary for your medical services. All completely above board and legal." Crenshaw's face twisted. "She's in debt to me. You can't just—" "How much?" Reeves interrupted. "What? How much does she owe you? You said 3,000 and some change." $3,427. Reeves reached into his saddlebag and produced a leather pouch. He tossed it at Crenshaw's feet. "There's $5,000 in gold. That covers Mrs. Whitmore's debt with interest." His voice hardened. "Now get off my land before I have Sheriff Garrett arrest you for trespassing, intimidation, and whatever else we can make stick." Crenshaw stared at the pouch in the dirt. His men shifted uneasily. "This isn't over, Reeves." "Yes, it is." The older man's voice was quiet, but implacable. "You've been a boil on this territory for too long. The governor's office is already investigating your business practices. The territorial marshal is looking into the fires that keep happening to homesteaders who won't sell to you. And Sheriff Garrett here has a stack of complaints about your men's behavior." He smiled. I'd suggest you take your money and use it to hire a very good lawyer. You're going to need one." The silence stretched. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Eli's tension beside her. Then Crenshaw bent and picked up the leather pouch. "I won't forget this," he said softly. "Any of you." "I'm counting on it." Reeves didn't flinch. "Now leave. And Silas, if I see you or your men anywhere near this ranch again, I'll consider it an act of war." For a moment Clara thought Crenshaw would argue, but something in Reeves's face must have convinced him otherwise. He turned his horse and rode away, his men following. Clara didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until it rushed out of her in a shaky exhale. "Is it over?" she whispered. Eli pulled her against him, his arm tight around her shoulders. "For now." Reeves dismounted and approached them, his expression softening as he took in Clara's pale face and trembling hands. "Mrs. Whitmore, please forgive the dramatic entrance. I was in Billings on business and only heard about the situation this morning." He took her hand, pressing it gently. "You're safe now. You and your children. I give you my word." "I can't accept your money," Clara said. "I don't even know you. I can't take $5,000 from a stranger." "You're not a stranger. You're the woman who's made my foreman smile again." Reeves's eyes crinkled with warmth. "Eli Thornton has been like a son to me for 7 years. I watched him bury his wife and child. I watched him shut everyone out. And then you arrived." He glanced at Eli. "He rode through a blizzard to find me last night. Told me everything. About you, about the children, about Crenshaw. And he asked me for help." Clara looked at Eli. "You rode through the night?" "You were in danger. I wasn't going to let Crenshaw win." "But the ranch, Miguel." "Rosa had everything under control, and I—" He stopped, his voice rough. "I love you, Clara. I would ride through 100 blizzards for you." Reeves cleared his throat. "I believe this is my cue to leave you two alone. Mrs. Whitmore, consider the debt payment a wedding gift. Eli tells me you've agreed to marry him." "I have," Clara said softly, her eyes never leaving Eli's face. "Then welcome to the family." Reeves tipped his hat. "I look forward to getting to know you and those remarkable children of yours." He mounted his horse and rode toward the main house with Sheriff Garrett, leaving Clara and Eli standing alone. "You should have told me," Clara said, "that you were going to Reeves. There wasn't time, and I didn't know if he'd help. He's not a man who interferes lightly." "But he did help, because of you." Eli nodded. "Because I asked. First time I've ever asked him for anything personal." He touched her face. "You're worth asking for, Clara. You're worth everything." Clara rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and love and relief into the contact. When they broke apart, she heard cheering. The ranch hands were applauding. Rosa stood on the porch wiping her eyes, and from the cellar door, 3 small faces had appeared, Samuel, Lily, and Grace, all watching with expressions ranging from confusion to delight. "Does this mean the bad man is gone?" Samuel called. "He's gone," Eli confirmed. "For good." Grace burst out of the cellar and ran toward them, launching herself at Eli with the same abandon she'd shown before. "I knew you'd beat him," she declared. "You're a hero just like in the stories." Eli caught her, swinging her up onto his hip. "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just a man who loves your mama very much." "That makes you a hero," Grace said with 4-year-old certainty. "Mama says heroes are people who do brave things for the people they love." Clara's throat tightened. She had said that in Boston when Grace asked about the war heroes in Samuel's history books. "Your mama's pretty smart." Eli set his eyes meeting Clara's over Grace's head. "I know." Grace patted his cheek. "That's why you should marry her." "I'm going to, as soon as she'll have me." "Tomorrow?" Grace asked hopefully. Clara laughed. "Not tomorrow, sweetheart, but soon." "How soon?" Eli looked at Clara, the question in his eyes clear. "How soon?" she repeated softly. I suppose that depends on how fast we can find a minister. There's a minister in Silver Creek. We could ride there tomorrow. Clara's heart raced. Tomorrow, Eli, that's too fast. She thought about it, thought about everything that had happened in the last week, the blizzard, the rescue, the growing connection between them, Crenshaw's threats, the kiss by the corral, the proposal, the standoff. In 7 days, her entire life had changed. Not too fast, she said. Perfect. Eli's smile could have lit up the entire Montana territory. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow. And as the children swarmed around them, chattering about wedding clothes and flowers, and whether Samuel could be the ring-bearer, Clara Whitmore allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings were real after all. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and clear, and Clara woke to find Grace already bouncing on her bed. "Mama, wake up! Today's the day you marry Uncle Eli!" Clara laughed, pulling her youngest into her arms. "I'm awake, sweetheart. I've been awake for hours." "Were you too excited to sleep?" Something like that. The truth was more complicated. Clara had lain awake most of the night, not from excitement, but from a strange, quiet peace. For the first time in years, she wasn't worried about tomorrow. She wasn't calculating how to stretch their food, how to pay their debts, how to keep her children safe from the consequences of Daniel's failures. Today she was marrying a man who loved her. A man who loved her children. A man who had ridden through a blizzard to save them and stood against an army to protect them. Today she was choosing hope. Rosa appeared in the doorway, her arms full of fabric. "The dress is ready. Mrs. Reeves sent it down from the main house this morning." Clara sat up confused. "Mrs. Reeves?" "James Reeves's late wife. She passed 5 years ago, but he kept her wedding gown. Said he always hoped someone would wear it again someday." Rosa's eyes glistened. "He asked if you would accept it, as a gift from the family you're joining." Clara's throat tightened as Rosa laid the dress across the bed. It was beautiful cream-colored silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs simple but elegant. The kind of dress Clara could never have afforded even in her Boston days. "I can't accept this," she whispered. "It's too much. It would mean a great deal to Mr. Reeves, and to Eli." Rosa touched her shoulder. "Let people love you, Clara. You've earned it." An hour later, Clara stood before the small mirror in her room, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at her. The dress fit as if it had been made for her, and Rosa had arranged her hair with small winter flowers that Samuel had insisted on picking himself. "Mama," Lily's voice came from the doorway. "You look beautiful." Clara turned to find all 3 children watching her. Samuel wore his best shirt freshly pressed. Grace had on a white dress that Rosa had altered from one of her daughter's old gowns. And Lily wore a blue ribbon in her hair that Clara recognized. "That was your grandmother's," Clara said softly. Lily touched the ribbon. "I know. I found it in the bag when we were packing. I've been saving it for something special." She hesitated. "Is this special enough?" Clara crossed the room and pulled her daughter into her arms. "This is the most special day we've had in a very long time." "Mama," Samuel's voice was uncertain. "Will things be different now? After you marry Uncle Eli?" Clara released Lily and knelt to Samuel's level. "Some things will be different, sweetheart. We'll have a new home, a new family. But the important things—" She touched his chest over his heart. "Those will stay the same. I'll always be your mama. Lily will always be your sister. Grace will always be your pest." "Hey," Grace protested, but she was giggling. "And Uncle Eli?" Samuel asked. "Uncle Eli will be your stepfather. If you want to call him Papa someday, that's your choice. But he'll love you either way." Samuel nodded slowly. Then his face broke into a grin. "Can we go now? Uncle Eli said there would be cake after the wedding." Clara laughed, the sound full and free in a way it hadn't been in years. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's go get married." The ride to Silver Creek took just over an hour. Mr. Reeves had insisted on providing a proper carriage complete with warm blankets and heated bricks for the children's feet. Eli rode alongside on his horse, and every time Clara glanced out the window, she found him looking back at her. "He's staring again," Lily observed. "He's allowed. He's about to be my husband." "It's still embarrassing." But Lily was smiling as she said it, and Clara felt her heart expand with gratitude. Her serious, wounded daughter was finally allowing herself to feel something other than fear. They arrived in Silver Creek to find the small church already filled with people. News of the wedding had spread quickly, and it seemed half the town had turned out to witness the ceremony. Clara recognized some faces from her brief encounter with Crenshaw's World shopkeepers, ranchers, families she hadn't yet met, but who had come to welcome her anyway. "Quite a turnout," Rosa murmured as she helped Clara down from the carriage. "I didn't expect this." People love a good love story, especially one that involves standing up to Silas Crenshaw. Rosa squeezed her hand. "You're already a legend, Clara. Might as well get used to it." Inside the church, Eli waited at the altar with Mr. Reeves standing as his witness. He was wearing a dark suit that Clara had never seen before, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. But what caught Clara's attention was his expression, a mixture of awe and disbelief and overwhelming joy that made her heart stutter. "You came," he said as she reached him. "Of course I came." "I was afraid." He stopped shaking his head. "Never mind. You're here. That's all that matters." The minister, a kindly older man named Reverend Thomas, smiled at them both. "Shall we begin?" Clara nodded, and the ceremony commenced. It was simple as frontier weddings tended to be. No elaborate music, no lengthy readings, just the ancient words of commitment spoken in a small church filled with strangers who had somehow become a community. Clara's voice was steady as she made her vows, her eyes never leaving Eli's face. "I, Clara Whitmore, take you, Elijah Thornton, to be my husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part." Eli's hands trembled slightly as he held hers. When it was his turn to speak, his voice was rough with emotion. "I, Elijah Thornton, take you, Clara Whitmore, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward." He paused, and when he continued, his words seemed to carry the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he'd found. "I promise to love you and your children with everything I have. I promise to be there when you need me, and even when you don't. I promise to build a life with you that's worth living." Reverend Thomas smiled. "Do you have the rings?" Samuel stepped forward, importantly holding out the small velvet pouch that contained 2 simple gold bands. Eli took them with a grateful nod to the boy, sliding the smaller one onto Clara's finger, and waiting as she did the same for him. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Thomas intoned, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." He looked at Eli with a twinkle in his eye. "You may kiss your bride." Eli cupped Clara's face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palms. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." And then he kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers. The reception was held at the town's small hotel paid for by Mr. Reeves, despite Clara's protests. There was food and music and dancing, and Clara found herself passed from partner to partner as the townspeople welcomed her into their community. "You've done something remarkable, Mrs. Thornton," Sheriff Garrett told her during one dance. "Crenshaw's been terrorizing this territory for years. Nobody's ever stood up to him the way you did. I didn't do anything except refuse to be bullied. That's more than most people manage." He spun her in a slow circle. "Word is the territorial marshal arrived in town this morning. Crenshaw's already under investigation. By spring, he'll likely be facing charges." Clara absorbed this news with quiet satisfaction. Justice finally for all the people Crenshaw had hurt. "Mama!" Grace's voice cut through the noise. "Mama, come quick! Something's wrong with Lily?" Clara's heart dropped. She was across the room in seconds, pushing through the crowd to where her eldest daughter sat, slumped in a chair, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Lily? Sweetheart, what is it? Are you hurt?" Lily shook her head, unable to speak. "She was fine 1 minute," Samuel reported anxiously. "Then she just started crying and couldn't stop." Clara knelt before her daughter, taking the girl's hands. "Lily, talk to me. What's wrong?" "I don't know," Lily sobbed. I looked at you dancing and you were smiling and everyone was happy and I—" Her voice broke. "Why couldn't Papa make you smile like that? Why couldn't he be like Uncle Eli?" "Oh, sweetheart." Clara's heart shattered. "Come here." She gathered Lily into her arms, holding tight as the girl wept. "It's okay. Let it out. I've got you." "I miss him," Lily confessed through her tears. "Even though he made you cry, even though he wasn't there for us, I still miss him, and I feel bad for being happy with Uncle Eli, like I'm betraying Papa's memory." "Listen to me." Clara pulled back, cupping Lily's face. "Your father loved you. In his way, as best he could, he loved you. Missing him doesn't mean you're being disloyal to Eli, and being happy with Eli doesn't mean you've stopped loving your father. It doesn't. No, sweetheart. The heart isn't like a cup that can only hold so much. It grows. It expands. There's room for all of it, the grief and the joy, the past and the future." Clara wiped her daughter's tears. "Your father would want you to be happy. That's all any parent wants for their child." "How do you know?" "Because it's what I want for you. And despite his flaws, your father and I agreed on that much." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up, her eyes red but clearer. "Do you think Papa would have liked Uncle Eli?" Clara considered the question honestly. "I think your father would have been grateful that someone was taking care of his family. And I think he would have been glad to see you smile again. Even though Uncle Eli is better than he was." The question, so blunt and so true, hung between them. "Your father wasn't a bad man, Lily. He was a weak one. There's a difference." Clara tucked a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Eli is different. Stronger, more present, more dependable. But that doesn't erase who your father was or what he meant to us. Do you understand?" Lily nodded slowly. "I think so." "Good." Clara stood, pulling Lily with her. "Now I believe someone promised you cake, and it would be a shame to miss it because of tears that were already shed." Lily managed a watery smile. "There's chocolate cake. 2 kinds according to Samuel." "2," Mrs. Reeves insisted. For the first time since her breakdown, Lily's expression lightened. "Maybe we should investigate. For scientific purposes." "Absolutely. Scientific purposes only." They made their way to the dessert table, where Samuel was already on his second slice, and Grace had chocolate frosting smeared across her cheeks. Eli appeared at Clara's side, his expression concerned. "Is everything all right?" "It will be." Clara leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "She's grieving. It comes in waves." "Should I talk to her?" "Not yet. Just be there. Be consistent. That's what she needs most." Eli nodded, his eyes on Lily as the girl carefully selected a piece of cake. "She's so young to carry so much. She's stronger than she looks. Like her mother, apparently." He looked at her, then his eyes warm with love and pride. "Her mother is the strongest person I've ever known." Flatterer. Truth-teller. He pulled her close, not caring who was watching. "You're magnificent, Mrs. Thornton. And I plan to spend the rest of my life telling you so." Clara smiled against his chest. "I might let you." The reception continued until late afternoon, when the winter light began to fade, and families with young children needed to start their journeys home. Clara and Eli said goodbye to their guests, accepting well wishes and promises to visit the ranch soon. As the last wagon pulled away, Clara found herself standing on the hotel porch with Eli and the children, looking out at the town that would be part of their new life. "Ready to go home?" Eli asked. Home. The word had never sounded sweeter. Yes, Clara said. Let's go home. The ride back to the rocking H was quieter than the morning's journey. Grace fell asleep in Clara's lap, almost immediately exhausted from the excitement. Samuel dozed against Lily's shoulder, and Lily herself sat with her eyes closed, the ghost of a smile on her face. Clara watched her children sleep and felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Real peace, the kind she hadn't experienced since before Daniel's gambling had destroyed their lives. "What are you thinking?" Eli's voice was soft through the carriage window. "That I didn't believe this was possible. Any of this. Believe it now." Clara looked at him, this man who had ridden through a blizzard to save them, who had faced down an army for them, who had promised to love them for the rest of his days. "I'm starting to." They arrived at the ranch as darkness fell. Rosa had prepared a feast for them, and despite having eaten at the reception, the children found room for more. Afterward, there were baths and bedtime stories, and all the usual rituals of settling children for the night. But tonight, everything felt different. Tonight, Clara wasn't preparing her children for sleep in temporary lodgings or borrowed rooms. Tonight, she was putting them to bed in their own home, with their new father standing in the doorway, watching with an expression of quiet wonder. "I love you, Mama," Grace murmured as Clara tucked her in. "I love Uncle Eli, too, and this house, and the horses, and Rosa's cooking, and—" "Sleep now, sweetheart. You can make your list tomorrow." "But it's a long list." "Then tomorrow will be a good day for it." Grace's eyes fluttered closed, and within seconds, she was breathing the deep, steady breaths of childhood sleep. Clara kissed her forehead and moved to Samuel's bed. The boy was already half asleep, but he roused enough to wrap his arms around her neck. "Is this real, Mama? Are we really staying here forever?" "We're really staying. And Uncle Eli is really our family now." "He really is." Samuel smiled, the expression so full of simple joy that Clara's eyes stung with tears. "Good. I like it here." "I like it here too, sweetheart." Lily was last. Clara sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, smoothing the blankets, even though they didn't need smoothing. "Today was a good day," Lily said quietly. "It was." "I'm sorry I cried. I didn't mean to make a scene." "You didn't make a scene. You felt something and you expressed it. There's nothing wrong with that." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mama, do you think we'll be happy here?" Clara considered the question. A week ago, she would have said that happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. A week ago, she would have settled for survival. "I think we already are happy," she said finally. "And I think it's only going to get better." Lily nodded, something easing in her expression. "I think so too." She reached out and took Clara's hand. "Thank you, Mama, for being brave enough to bring us here, for choosing Uncle Eli, for everything." Clara's throat tightened. "Thank you for trusting me. I know it wasn't easy." It was easier than staying in Boston would have been. Clara kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sleep well, Lily. Tomorrow's a new day." "The first day of our new life." "Yes, the first of many." She left the children's room and found Eli waiting in the hallway, his expression soft in the lamplight. "They're asleep. Or close to it." Clara leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of how tired she was. "It's been quite a day." "It has." Eli took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Thornton?" "Exhausted. Overwhelmed." She looked up at him. "Happy. So happy it scares me." "Scares you?" "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop. That's what always happened before." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her close against his chest. "I can't promise that nothing will ever go wrong," he said quietly. "Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that whatever comes, we'll face it together. You and me and those 3 beautiful children in there. You really love them, don't you? Not just me, them. How could I not? His voice was rough with emotion. They're part of you, Clara. The best parts. And even if they weren't, even if you'd come to me without them, I think I would have loved them anyway. They're impossible not to love. Clara pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, horses and wood smoke, and something uniquely Eli. I never thought I'd have this again. A partner. Someone who actually wanted to be part of our lives. I more than want it. I need it. He pulled back to look at her face. You asked me once what you'd brought me back from. The truth is, I wasn't really living before you came. I was just going through the motions, waiting for my time to run out. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. You and Samuel and Lily and Grace. You made me remember what it feels like to hope. Clara reached up and touched his face, tracing the lines around his eyes, the strong line of his jaw. I love you, Elijah Thornton. I love you too, Clara Thornton. He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. I plan to spend the rest of my life proving it. I'll hold you to that. Please do. He kissed her, then slowly, thoroughly, with all the tenderness and passion of a man who had finally found his way home. When they broke apart, Clara was smiling. Take me to bed, husband. Eli's answering grin was full of promise. With pleasure, wife. He swept her into his arms and carried her down the hallway to the room that was now theirs, leaving the door slightly open in case the children needed them. Because that's who they were now, not just 2 people in love, but a family. A real family, built from loss and hope, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Outside, the Montana winter continued its cold embrace. But inside the walls of the rocking H, warmth prevailed. Warmth and love, and the sound of children sleeping peacefully in the next room. Clara Thornton, no longer. Whitmore, no longer alone, closed her eyes and let herself finally completely believe in happy endings. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning, Clara stood on the porch of the cabin that had become their home and watched her children play in the yard. Samuel was practicing rope tricks with Miguel, who had fully recovered from his gunshot wound and become something of an older brother figure to the boy. Grace was collecting wildflowers for a crown she was making for Rosa, and Lily was reading on a blanket, occasionally looking up to smile at the antics of her siblings. Eli came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? Clara leaned back into him. How different this is from a year ago, from 6 months ago even. Different good. Different extraordinary. She turned in his arms, looking up at his face. We got a letter from Sheriff Garrett this morning. About Crenshaw. He's been convicted. 15 years in federal prison for fraud, extortion, and a dozen other charges. His properties are being sold to compensate his victims. Eli exhaled slowly. It's really over then. It's really over. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the children breathing in the spring air. In the distance, cattle grazed on the green hillsides, and the sound of ranch hands working drifted on the breeze. Clara. Eli's voice was different now, careful. There's something I need to tell you. She looked at him, noting the nervousness in his expression. What is it? I wasn't completely honest with you about why I went to find you in that blizzard. Clara's heart skipped. What do you mean? I told you I just happened to be on that road, that I stumbled across you by accident. He took a breath. That wasn't true. Then how? The stagecoach driver. He came through town that night before the worst of the storm hit. He was drinking at the saloon, bragging about how he'd lightened his load. Eli's jaw tightened. Talking about a widow and her brats that he'd dumped on the roadside? Clara's blood ran cold. You heard him. I did. And He stopped, his voice rough. I thought about Martha, about Rose, about all the times I wasn't there when I should have been. And I knew I couldn't let another woman and her children die because some coward was too afraid to do the right thing. So you went looking for us. I rode for 3 hours in that blizzard, followed the stagecoach route backward, searching every drift, every hollow. His eyes met hers. I almost missed you. If Grace hadn't been wearing that red scarf, I might have ridden right past. Clara's hand went to her throat. Grace's red scarf. The one that had been a Christmas gift from Daniel, one of the few things she'd kept of his. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't want you to think I'd saved you just so you'd owe me something. He took her hands. But now that we're married, now that I know you're staying because you want to, I needed you to know. I chose you, Clara. Before I ever saw your face, before I knew anything about you, except that you were in danger, I chose you. Tears streamed down Clara's face. You impossible man. Is that good or bad? She laughed through her tears. It's everything. You're everything. She kissed him right there on the porch, with the children playing in the yard and Rosa watching from the kitchen window, with a knowing smile. When they broke apart, Eli rested his forehead against hers. I have one more thing to tell you. More secrets. No, news. He smiled that rare, brilliant smile that still made her heart race. Doc Aldrich stopped by while you were with the children this morning. He confirmed what we suspected. Clara's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. He did. Late November, he thinks, just before Thanksgiving. A baby. Their baby. A child that would be born into love and security, and a family that had been forged through fire. Are you happy? Clara asked. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Eli pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her as if he would never let go. I have you. I have those 3 incredible children. And now, his voice broke. Now I get another chance. A chance to be there from the beginning. To watch my child grow up. Our child. Our child. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Thank you, Clara, for giving me this life, for giving me another chance to be a father. Clara held him tight, feeling his heartbeat against her chest, feeling the promise of the future growing inside her. You gave yourself that chance, she said softly. The night you rode into a blizzard to save a woman you'd never met. The moment you refused to let Crenshaw win. Every day since then when you've shown up for me and my children without being asked. Our children, she smiled. Our children. From the yard, Grace's voice rang out. Mama, Papa, come see my flower crown. Papa. The word still made Eli's breath catch even after months of hearing it. Clara took his hand and led him down the porch steps toward their children, toward the life they'd built together. Behind them, the cabin stood solid and welcoming, no longer just a foreman's quarters, but a home. Inside, Rosa was preparing lunch. In the barn, Miguel was teaching Samuel about horses. At the main house, Mr. Reeves was going over the books that would someday pass to Eli. And everywhere, on every inch of the rocking H Ranch, love was growing. Clara Whitmore had come to Montana Territory with $17, 3 children, and the desperate hope that somewhere, somehow, she could build a new life. She had found so much more than that. She had found a partner, a community, a purpose. She had found a man who loved her children as his own and who had taught her to believe in second chances. She had found home. And as Eli lifted Grace onto his shoulders, and Samuel grabbed his hand, and Lily looked up from her book with a smile, Clara knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because fate had brought her here, but because she had been brave enough to take a chance on hope. And hope against all odds had delivered. She was Clara Thornton now, wife, mother, midwife, and one of the strongest women in Montana Territory. And she had never been happier in her life.